Right. Good morning and welcome to the meeting of the Pre-Application Forum on Thursday, the 1st of September 2022. This is a remote meeting and we have officers and members joining us via Microsoft Teams. I will now take a roll call of those councillors who are in attendance and to ensure that remote members can hear. Please remember that this meeting is being recorded and we may have some external members joining up to watch the proceedings. The recording will be placed on the council website, and if I can ask members to remember to switch off their microphones and indeed their cameras when they're not speaking, and that will give us more focus on the people that are actually speaking. So if I could ask members to do that. Mrs. McBain, could you please read the members' names and we'll go through an attendance.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. So just please indicate that you're present. Convener?
Present.
Vice Convener?
Present.
Councillor Alphonse? Councillor Blake?
Present.
Thanks. Councillor Bolton?
Present.
Councillor Cook? Councillor Copeland?
Present.
Councillor Clark substituting for Councillor Cormie?
Present.
Councillor Crockett? Councillor Houghton? Councillor Mackenzie? Councillor McRae? Councillor Thompson?
Present.
Thank you. We've got 7 members in attendance. And Councillor Graham, are you here as a local member? I think he's watching in the background. And Councillor Neil McGregor had, thank you, and Councillor Neil McGregor had indicated he would also join, but I can't see him online. But perhaps.
Present.
Okay,
Present.
you're here. Sorry, we're good to proceed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Your mic's
Councillor
on
Hendrickson, you're
down.
on mute.
Yeah, and after me asking everyone to switch their cameras off and microphones off, there's various people coming in, so we'll keep a record of who's present as they come in. If we can do that, Lindsay will get a move on. Well, as I said, good morning and welcome to the meeting of the Pre-Application Forum on Thursday, the 1st of September. We'll go through the agenda. Item 1 is introduction and procedural notes. That's just for noting. Item 2 is minutes of previous meeting on the 30th of September 2021. Can I get approval of that?
Agreed.
Thank you. We now move on to items 3 and 4, which will be taken together for the Green Ferns and Landwood applications. I'll just go through these. 2 applications will be presented at the same time. Proposal of application notice for a major residential land mixed-use development of 1,650 homes comprising retail and commercial provision, leisure, community uses associated with infrastructure, including access roads, landscaping and engineering works, land at Green Ferns, local development site OP 33 and 28. We'll also be taking the proposal of application notice for a major residential-led mixed-use development of 1,570 homes comprising retail and commercial provision, leisure and community uses, gypsy travellers site and associated infrastructure, including access roads, landscape, developing, engineering works, land at Green Ferns, Landwood, local development plan site OP22. Planning officer Gavin Clark will give a quick overview of the proposed applications, providing details with the planning policies, and then hand over to the applicants, who are represented by Michael Lorimer from Rydens, Christopher Gray from OPN, and Ian Logan from OPN. After that, we'll have a period where members can ask questions of both the applications. So I'd just like to hand over to Mr. Clark for the starting of the
Thank you, convener. I've just got a short presentation and background, so I'll just get that uploaded. If you could let me know when you can see it, and I'll just begin. Is that up on screen now? Yeah.
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, so I'll just provide you with a quick introduction to both sites before we hand over to the applicants. Firstly, Green Ferns, which is located to the north of Shedixley and the west of Northfield, and is allocated in the Aberdeen Local Development Plan for around 1,470 homes and 10 hectares of employment land as OP28 and OP33 on a site extending to approximately 80 hectares. As you will see from the aerial photo, the site includes a number of greenfields with Orchard Brae and Heatheryburn schools just on the eastern section of the site, and the existing Intermec buildings in the northern section of the site along the northern boundary. Then going to this, so we have the allocations in the Aberdeen Local Development Plan. So we have OP28 just here, OP33, we have the existing residential area to the east, and there's a footpath connection which runs through the green belt to the landward site to the north, and another connection proposed to the south into Shedixley. Of the Bucksburn Local Nature Conservation Site, which is predominantly out with the application site boundary, but as you'll see from the green, does run along the northern boundary and into part of the site. Green Space Network, which again is predominantly out with the application site, and then core paths again, one which runs through the site and a number which run just out with the site boundary. So that was just a quick brief introduction to Green Ferns, and then sorry, I should then add the current proposal seeks consent for a mixed-use development of circa 1,650 homes, comprising retail and commercial provision, leisure and community uses, and associated infrastructure. The relevant policy considerations are highlighted within the report, with a number of matters which would need to be considered in the assessment of any future planning application. So then, as I was just about to go onto the Green Fern landward site, it's located within the New Hills area, to the north of Aberdeen, and is allocated in the Aberdeen Local Development Plan for 1,500 homes and 10 hectares of employment land as OP22, and extends to approximately 70 hectares. As you will see from the aerial photo, which I'm just about to bring up, Bucksburn sits to the immediate east, with residential developments at Rowett, located to the north, which are currently under construction, and the AWPR located to the west. The current proposal of application notice seeks consent for a mixed-use development of approximately 1,570 homes, comprising retail and commercial provision, leisure and community uses, a gypsy traveller site, and associated infrastructure, including roads, landscaping and engineering works. The relevant policy considerations are again highlighted within the report, and a number of matters would need to be considered in the assessment of any future application. I'll just go through another few slides here as well. We have the allocations in the Aberdeen Local Development Plan, so we'll have Green Fern landward. There's a small section of the site to the northeast, which is designated as OP23 and Rowett South, and a small section in the western side, which is designated as Greenbelt. And again, this footpath, or this connection, and it's an existing footpath road connection, which would run to Green Ferns, which is located to the south. Again, as you will see, it's a similar plan to what I've just shown you for the other site. This is the local nature conservation site, which is located to the south of this application site boundary. And again, the green space network, which is located to the south of the application site boundary. So I'm happy to take any questions, or we can just pass over to the applicants who can provide you with further information as well.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. We'll move on to the applicants, and then once everyone's spoken, I'll open it up to questions. So if we could have the applicants now to give their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, convener and members of the forum. My name is Michael Larmer. I'm a planning consultant with Ryden. I'm joined today by Christopher Gray and Ian Logan from Open Optimised Environments, who are master planners for the site, and we've been appointed as part of a wider design team to progress planning permission applications for planning permission in principle and master plans for both the Green Ferns and Green Ferns landward sites. I think at the outset, it's maybe worth just providing some context to both sites and the relevant planning history up to the present day. This can be traced back to the 2009 City and Shire Structure Plan. That introduced a special strategy for the City and Shire region with a number of strategic growth areas, which included Aberdeen City as one of those growth areas. The 2009 Structure Plan, it set out aspirations to grow the population of the city and set out an allowance of 36,000 new homes for the city over a 20-year period up to 2030. This special strategy has been successfully progressed for 12 years now, having been rolled forward into the 2014 and the current 2020 Strategic Development Plan. As a result of these growth aspirations, the 2012 Aberdeen Local Development Plan released a significant level of greenfield land for housing, with a large number of strategic housing sites allocated within that plan. So both the Green Ferns and Green Ferns landward sites were allocated in the 2012 LDP as housing-led sites. These allocations were then rolled forward into the adopted 2017 Local Development Plan and are maintained within the emerging 2020 proposed Local Development Plan, which I think is anticipated for adoption in the coming months. So within the current LDP, as Gavin had explained previously, the Green Ferns sites allocated for around 1,470 homes and 10 hectares of employment land under OP28 and OP33. And Green Ferns landward, which is just to the northwest, it's OP22, that's allocated for around 1,500 homes. There has been a degree of planning history associated with these sites. Both sites are subject to approved development frameworks. The Green Ferns Development Framework was adopted as supplementary guidance to the previous 2012 Local Development Plan. Now, that's been subsequently updated and it was approved in 2018 as interim planning guidance to the adopted 2017 Local Development Plan. Similarly, for Green Ferns landward, that site was progressed as part of the wider New Hills expansion area, which takes in OP21 and OP20 to Rowett South and Cravesden South. Both those sites are now subject to live planning consents and are actually delivering housing on the ground. The New Hills Development Framework remains supplementary guidance to the adopted 2017 Local Development Plan. So it's fair to say the principle of developing both these sites as residential-led mixed-use communities is firmly established by the development plan, and it's Aberdeen City Council's intention as applicant for both sites to progress applications for planning permission in principle and supporting master plans, and those shall be submitted in the coming months. To inform that process, the appointed design team have been progressing extensive public consultation on the proposals, having initially engaged with the public via online consultations in June and July of this year. And we're now in the process of following those consultations up with face-to-face traditional public drop-in exhibitions, which are actually taking place this week. We had the Green Ferns public consultation on Tuesday afternoon, and the Green Ferns landward one is actually taking place today, this afternoon from 3 until 7 p.m. If you guys could just flick to the slide with the, so just as a kind of a quick run through then, Gavin had obviously explained this previously, but for Green Ferns, the proposal of application notice and what we would intend submitting as part of the planning permission of principle would be for a residential-led mixed-use development comprising around 1,650 homes, employment uses, a new neighbourhood centre which would largely comprise local retail and commercial provision, and as well as that, leisure, community uses and supporting infrastructure, including new access roads, landscaping and open space and engineering works. Similarly, for Green Ferns landward, again, a residential-led development that would encompass around 1,570 homes, a new primary school, local neighbourhood retail and commercial provision, as well as leisure and community uses. There's also provision made within the site for a gypsy traveller site and extensive landscape, open space and infrastructure works. I'll now pass over to Ian and Chris, who'll provide a short overview and background to the client brief for both sites and how the proposals are taking shape in the lead up to formal submission of planning permission.
Thanks very much, Michael. Thanks for that overview and thanks for your time today. So our client is Aberdeen City Council, and both sites are part of the Aberdeen Housing Programme. So the brief to us is to work up master plans and development framework level information that will help support the delivery of council housing on these sites. There is a mix of council housing and private sites, so the strategy will be that council housing will come forward in the first instance, and a mix of market and council housing will follow in further phases. So just a few slides briefly on our kind of approach that we've been taking, and then Ian and myself will be quickly introducing the sites and giving you an overview of the current thoughts to date. So some of the key approaches and key themes that we've been taking for both sites, these have been considered together because they're very much a linked pair of sites. The first one is the 20-minute neighbourhood concept, which is in emerging national policy. And this is the idea that we want to make sure that we have facilities for people to access within a 20-minute walk or cycle, so that they can access schools, shops and other facilities. Also really important on these sites and in general in the context of the climate emergency that we have is the fact that we need to approach these with a blue-green infrastructure approach. So what does that mean? Well, at Countess Wells, which this image is from, it's about accommodating green space and movement of water, whether that's existing water or keeping water on site, which would otherwise go off site, into key corridors which are usable space for the people that live on the site. And this has been very successfully completed at Countess Wells, where a fairly inert and not very biodiverse site of agricultural land has really been transformed through the early infrastructure works to create stream corridors that are usable and are very biodiverse and have become a habitat for wildlife. And that also includes SUDS features, so sustainable urban drainage systems, where we hold the water on the site before it's released back into the natural watercourses, and making sure that those are not just open basins or ponds, but these become biodiverse areas where wildlife and people can use them. Also really high in our priority, especially given that Aberdeen is working to the UNICEF-led initiative for the child-friendly city. We've been considering child-centric design, whether that's down at the level of play parks, but also including them in our decision-making process, which is something that will be ongoing. Movement around the sites has been key, so that we've got accessible routes, and that's for pedestrians, cyclists, wheelchair users, but also the more active types of travel. And finally, we're also considering the growing space for people to take on board their own ability to whether to grow fruit or grow vegetables or grow flowers, but there's an increasing interest and demand for people to have the control of some kind of land that they can grow themselves on. So that's just a very broad overview on the kind of a general approach. I want to give you just a high-level overview of landward, and Ian, my colleague, is going to talk about green ferns. So landward, which, just in case you haven't walked around the site, these are some key shots actually looking from the southern edge of the site towards the New Hills Parish Church and Brimond Hill in the background, from the edge of the Bucksburn. And the Bucksburn, as Michael had mentioned, is within a local nature conservation site to the south, and separates the two sites. So it's a really key natural corridor that we're considering. Within the landward site itself, there's a number of good areas of landscape features. There's a series of and a network of tracks which are well used, and there are some good views back towards the city and back across to Green Ferns itself. This slide here just shows you some of the challenges of the rolling topography. So on landward particularly, there are a series of valleys and corridors which hold some of the drainage routes. And it's a rolling landscape that comes down from Keppel Hills Road and rolls in a series of local valleys towards the Bucksburn corridor. Within those valleys, there's local drainage ditches. These have mostly been modified for agricultural use, but with good views back to the city, as I mentioned. And just finally, we're obviously conscious that there's an existing neighbourhood on the eastern side, which we want to make sure that we're creating appropriate buffer and a setting to the residents that already live there. So that's the site, and as Michael had said, it has been considered before through the New Hills Development Framework, which we also helped input into. So there are key principles that have been established for development within there, and the connections through to Rowett South to the north and then further north to Craveston. So we know, and I won't repeat what's going in, but we know what's going to be in there, and it's a range of local services which will help service the new residents and also existing residents on the edges. So in terms of the work done so far, it's fair to say that landward, because of some of the complexities of the utilities and some of the surveys that have had to be undertaken, we're not quite as advanced as Greenfern. So the plans that Ian will show you are more advanced. But for landward, we've got a really good set of current information, whether that's tree surveys, topographic surveys, testing of the water main pressures which run through the site, which have been a considerable constraint that we've had to deal with, and also ecological surveys, so environmental, a full suite of environmental studies that help support our proposals. And there's really two themes that have come up through the public consultation that we've had to date, which have really shaped our emerging proposals. And the first one is the fact that it's a really well-used site. People walk through this, and indeed, every time we've been on site, we've seen people using these tracks. They're really well used. They're a really good resource. They let people get into the kind of countryside and into open space, and that's been reflected. We've noted that, but it's been reflected in the comments that we've had from people during consultation. And so we really want to ensure that those routes are retained. Excuse me. There are not any core paths running through the site, but there are well-used paths and other paths. So it's not a public right of way. It is designated as an other path, that blue route. And there's an aspiration. These pink lines are the aspirational core paths. So that's very much shaped our proposed development in terms of the movement network, ensuring that those existing routes are retained, and there's a further level of movement network overlaid on that, so that people can move from existing locations into the site and to the new services. And the second theme really that's come up is really about retaining good areas of biodiversity. So as I mentioned before, we have a full suite of environmental surveys. This diagram here shows the high biodiversity values in pink, and then low biodiversity values in yellow. So you can see there's some core corridors that really reflect the existing tree routes and existing tracks, and that's what we've tried to incorporate into the emerging proposals. So key corridors which are not only used for people walking through them, but also as wildlife corridors which have existing trees on them or existing woodland areas are retained. And the other element that is on top of this, going back to the Countess Well slides that we showed you, the integration of the existing drainage routes and watercourses through the site to make sure that we've got a proper blue-green network which people and wildlife can move through. And so we have a draft development framework. This is what we're going to be showing this afternoon in the public consultation, and our aim is to ask people their thoughts on some of the key uses that they might want to see within these open spaces. So that's very briefly landward, and I'm going to pass on to Ian, who will give you an overview on green ferns.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, everybody. I'll give a very similar introduction to the green fern site. As Chris said, there's a bit more detail on this, which hopefully I can convey this afternoon. This is the red line, the planning application boundary, as previously been mentioned, it's on just to the west of the Northfield area, north of the Shedixley sports pitch area, and with the northern boundary defined by the Bucksburn corridor. One thing I will point out is you'll see the red line very much follows the local development plan application. However, we have these two legs. The one to the north has been included to allow connection. It's an existing path link to the Greenferns landward site, and we've included that to allow for any potential upgrades. Likewise, the leg to the south there connecting down to Shedixley is another existing path that connects to the existing core path network. So we've included these for the opportunity for any potential improvements to path network. They're not streets. Next slide, Chris. The next slide included here is just the aerial photograph, just to show the sites, the site location, the two existing schools that were mentioned at Orchard Brae and Heathreburn. The NMX site, the industrial site, they're set immediately adjacent to the Bucksburn, and the site character, which has been a key thing in shaping this. It is wholly owned by Aberdeen City Council, apart from the NMX site, and retained predominantly for agricultural use, predominantly grazing and horse stables livery. Next slide, Chris. Included some photos as Chris did just to explain the site. As you can see here, typical photograph of the site, grazing fields, well defined by well-established field boundaries defined by stone dikes, and mature, either overgrown hedges or mature trees, some of which are classed as ancient woodland. We have had all these trees surveyed, so we now have a very clear schedule of what's the condition of these and what's important to retain, which we'd like to retain most, if not all, of the trees where possible. Next slide, Chris, please. Other key characteristic of the site, similar to Landward, is the extensive footpath network across the site. There are small sections of core path within the Greenfern site to the east. However, there is a great network of existing formal paths, such as we see on the slides here, following farm tracks and whatnot, all well signposted. Also informal paths that people have picked up and start to use field edges, you know, particularly over the last period when access to open space has been key. And these are all things, it's come through consultation, that we'll be very keen to understand where they are and retain these where possible, or enhance them. Next slide, please, Chris. As I said, the site is predominantly agricultural land. The field boundaries are the key characteristics. However, there are some other things that have cropped up on survey that are important. Areas of wetland, some areas of habitat, and the slide here, an example, there are some small water courses, parts of which have been culverted, which we would like to explore opening up and making into features within the site area. That's similar to what Chris described at Countess Wells. This photo shows the western edge of the site, and just to explain the rural edge location, the views across to the landward site, the potential for connections there, considering the area, the two sites together as a whole, the Bucksburn corridor as a key environmental asset in between, and also the great views out. That's Brimond Hill in the distance there. Next slide, please, Chris. As both Michael and Chris have touched on, the site has been allocated for over 10 years now, and we've been involved in preparing the previous development framework in 2010 and the subsequent update that we see here in 2018. So there is a development framework for the site. It is adopted as planning advice, and on this site, we are not, the process we're working through is not looking at wholesale change for this. It's refining it to meet the current brief we have from our client in terms of housing mix and other uses within the neighbourhood centre, and also updating it to reflect current best practice and the surveys we have for the site. So it's really developing this, refining it. The plan you see here on the screen is the current working plan that we have been consulting on and developing with the Aberdeen City Council office. So very much in line with the adopted planning advice. The neighbourhood centre is in the same place. We are retaining the industrial land for potential expansion with Enomic, who we are talking to. The street network remains consistent. The biggest change is in the open space network. The land allocated for sustainable urban drainage has increased, and the areas of open space and field boundaries green network has been better defined to reflect the current surveys we have. Next slide, please, Chris. Similar to Chris showed, we have an extensive network suite of surveys, right from ground conditions right through to this plan, reflecting the ecological surveys which have been, and tree surveys, which have been key and in updating the framework, ensuring all these mature trees, areas of ancient woodland and areas of high ecological value can be retained and enhanced where possible as part of the green network. Next slide, please. The relationship with the Bucksburn Local Nature Conservation Site to the north has also been a key consideration and something we're working closely with the Aberdeen City Council officers on to ensure that's well protected in terms of the environment it provides. This is just showing the updated open space network. As I say, it's been the kind of defining point. Next slide, please, Chris. Integrating the existing ditches, opening up areas that are culverted, and connecting that with the sustainable urban drainage basins as part of this blue-green network. And from that, we have defined the blocks. It's really been working from what's on the site, looking at the landscape structure to help define the blocks and update the framework we have, rather than the other way around. Next slide, please, Chris. That open space network very as meeting the standards in terms of open space, and we've been looking at where we can best locate play areas shown in here with walking distance, so it's fully accessible. We also allotments and community gardens, which have been a popular thing through the consultation process. The path network that I touched on being key in terms of retaining that, enhancing that as much as possible, all the paths that are well used on site, and also the connections to the there's a great connections to the surrounding core path network there. Next slide, please. As part of that, one of the key things we're looking at is primary cycle routes, where these should be next to streets, where these should be dedicated cycle routes to ensure the whole area is as accessible as possible for people using sustainable forms of transport. Next slide, please, Chris. The street network has also been a key thing, with the main connections from Provost Rust Drive to the north and Provost Fraser Drive to the south, providing a opportunity for a looped bus route through the site or opportunities for looped routes there. Again, these show 400-metre walk distances to ensure all new housing within this area will be easily accessible to bus routes and bus stops. Linked to that is the street network, which is shown here, the primary street being the one in blue, connecting the two streets to the north, Provost Rust and Provost Fraser, and has been informing the process. One of the key considerations has been ensuring safe vehicle movement around the schools and to the NMX site, which is, we've been, as I say, been meeting with them and discussing that, and have plans for that we're seeing evolve. Next slide. Finally, as Chris described, that was a brief overview of the framework. What we're also preparing closely, and I've been working through a series of workshops with the Aberdeen City Council officers, is preparing the Phase 1 master plan, which will give a bit more detail in terms of urban design principles and principles for the areas of open space as to how these might look, feel, and what key characteristics we would like to draw out. So this is a sketch of the master plan. As I say, it is evolving, but there will be that level of detail showing individual plots and key urban design features and open space features developed to support the planning application. Thank you. That's everything. As I say, a brief overview, but we'll, I think, finish now to take some questions if there are any.
Excuse me. Thank you very much for that. Now open it up for questions. If you just give me, so if anyone's got any questions, feel free to ask either the applicants or Mr. Clark. Yeah, Councillor Blake.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm looking at my screen here, but actually I'll turn this way, so I'm actually looking at you. Yeah, so there was a couple of things I wanted to ask. Thank you for that presentation. Firstly, I wanted to ask about, so in the Green Ferns, there wasn't a primary school, that was only in the Green Ferns landward one. Now, looking at the education role forecast for Heatheryburn, it looks, Heatheryburn looks quite full. So are we envisaging that these children, there will be capacity within Heatheryburn, or would they be looking to go to the Green Ferns landward school when that would be built?
My understanding is that children from Green Ferns would be allocated to Northfield Academy, Heatheryburn and West Park schools.
Okay.
Yeah, appreciate that Heatheryburn, I think in terms of the current school roll forecast, as you say, is slightly over capacity. However, West Park is operating under capacity. So
Okay.
if there are capacity issues as a result of this development, as applications come forward, there will be discussions with Aberdeen City Council Education Service and Developer Obligations team, and there will be developer obligations sought from the development to alleviate any capacity issues at the surrounding schools.
Yeah, I think I would just add on that yeah, we would be consulting education on any planning application, and if there is a requirement for any additional schools, additional building, then yeah, it would be subject to monetary contributions as a result of any legal agreement.
Okay. Can I ask sorry, convener, can I ask two other questions?
That's fine.
Yeah. Firstly, I was really delighted to see about the consultation with children as part of this. I think that's really important. But I just wanted to ask whether that would be primarily primary school age children, or you're going to involve secondary school age children as well, because I'm very conscious that when often we put in things like play parks, that's targeted at the younger groups, like my children. But it's often the teenagers who are left with not having access to facilities or things to do. And so I was wondering whether they are included in that very welcome opportunity for consultation.
Yeah, so the ACC officers are organising the kind of format and who we're approaching, but we would hope to have a full range from primary school up to secondary school. And I think what we're hoping to get out of the in-person consultations is ideas about exactly what you just mentioned, facilities for older kids. It's not just about play parks. Is it about skate parks? Is it about parkour areas? How can we get them engaged and give them something to do? It's not just hanging around in play parks. So yeah, definitely considering it and working with ACC officers to work on that consultation part of things.
And then, sorry, if the convener will indulge me with one more. When you were talking about the cycle paths, the pictures that you showed were largely of the multi-use paths and indeed, obviously, the tracks. I guess what I would be interested in knowing is what consultation we might have with the cycling community, but also, what else are you considering? Are you looking at the junction design, segregated lanes, drop curbs, what are the other things that you're consulting about that?
Ian, do you want to?
Yeah, excuse me. We had a specific workshop with Aberdeen City Council roads officers and our own transport team, and the design of cycle routes was a key discussion there. And it's this whole point, I'm sure you're aware, but whether they're on street or segregated or a combination. So we are developing that through the design, and I can say for Green Ferns at the moment, it's a combination of on street routes for people commuting and segregated routes using the existing path network for more like families and children to move through the site safely to school. So on Green Ferns, there'll be a combination. I think that's probably the approach that we'll carry through to Green
I think
Friends
it's
landward
also
as
to
well.
make the point that sometimes it's also things like it's good to have those lanes, but you know, are there drop curbs at the end so that people don't need to go along the pavements to drop off? You know, are there things like how the junction's designed?
Yes.
That's also the things that need to be considered. And it's just making sure that we're looking at that too.
Definitely. Thank you for good points.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Councillor Bolton, you're next. And I'm just about to remind people to put their hand down, just so that I don't get confused because I've got massive hands in front of me. So over to you, Councillor Bolton.
Okay, thank you very much, convener, and thank you for your presentation this morning. I've got a few questions, so if I just perhaps take them one at a time. Orchard Brace Special Needs School, which was obviously shown on the design. Can you just explain exactly what's going to be around it? Because it seemed to be abutting some allocation for development. And then behind it, I just wanted to understand what that little triangle was in terms of find out if it was sand ponds or if it was an area, because part of the Orchard Brae story was all about that open space around it. And I just feel it looks like it's getting kind of confined with development all the way around. So it was really to understand what concept you're doing around the special Orchard Brae.
Yes, I'm happy to pick that up. So the Orchard Brae School is obviously the northern boundary won't be changing. That's to the Heathrow-Burn School and the access road. The eastern boundary, sorry, is to the existing Davidson Drive. You're correct. To the west of the site, we are retaining the existing trees that line the boundary of the school, and then immediately west of that, there is an area which will locate Suds Basin and a local park area next to that. So there is open space immediately to the west of the school. The area to the south of the school is allocated for housing, and that will form part of the first phase of development. So there'll be some affordable housing located there. We do understand the sensitivities of the school, and we are trying to offset from that boundary a suitable distance, and thinking about where we integrate path links along there, because that's currently a field boundary that a lot of people from Davidson Drive used to walk in informally. So it's a balance about retaining path links, or even if they're informal, and where the housing might sit in the school boundary. So I think there will be a buffer, but there is housing immediately to the south of it.
Okay, you know, and it's good that you've noted that it will need probably special treatment just to be able to reassure the parents of children going there. Just following on Councillor Blake's point about drop curbs, I mean, we've talked a lot about the cycle, but obviously we saw it in some of your drawings about disabled use going along these pavements and mums with prams as well. So again, I think, you know, gone are the days where we just expected people to bounce down the curb. So again, if we could just think about how we treat the pavements in terms of for people with disabilities, I think would be really, really helpful. Back to the education, because there was nothing actually in the report about education. Now we've heard about the primary, and we've heard that one of the sites will obviously be zoned to Northfield. What's the intention from a secondary provision for the other, the one at New Hills? Is that Bucksburn or?
Yeah, understanding is that it would be Bucksburn. I think longer term there is plans to accommodate some pupils within Countess Wells Secondary School. I appreciate obviously that's stalled somewhat at the moment, given the situation at Countess Wells, but I believe that site is going to a closing date in the coming weeks. So hopefully things will progress there as well. But again, it's a conversation we need to have with and continue to have with ACC Housing. And if there are capacity issues, then that will be addressed through developer obligations. There is a requirement at Green Ferns to actually provide a primary school as well. So there will be one provided within the site.
I mean, obviously, Countess Wells, if there's a new school there, it's not really going to be walkable for the pupils. So, you know, again, there's going to have to be a resource in terms of busing kids. So all of that, I suppose, it's just to make sure that, because we know that Bucksburn's already full, so we've got an application later this afternoon to deal with. Can I just, on page 27 of the report, it said the red line area has been extended beyond the LDP allocation to include 2 potential accesses to the site, north and south, currently existing tracks. Now, when you were talking, you were saying, yes, there are existing tracks, but and you didn't elaborate any further on that. But there was the suggestion you said for future expansion. So it's just to actually pick up, I think we've got to be quite open around this. Is it, to be for vehicle access? Because, as I say, it just says in the report, currently existing tracks. And as I say, what then added to that was when you spoke about future expansion between the 2 sites. So it was really just to kind of get a better understanding.
Apologies, that'd be my fault for not being clear. There's no intention for future expansion to the Greenfern site. The allocation is what we're looking at. It simply was to include those tracks. So it should have been about connection between Greenferns and Greenferns landward. Potential improvements to those paths should it be desired, because currently they're rough farm tracks, and if there's so a desire to improve these as better cycle lengths, or whether they're looking at lighting, all these things up for consideration. So it's just to allow for that should it be desired.
Okay,
There's no expansion.
That's okay. It was just, as I said, just like to be clear, I wasn't having an issue with it. It was just to make sure. There was one other one that was, has there been discussions with the bus and operators in terms of being able to add to the current route of, say, when you take in more loops, it builds in more time. So I know that that's something that's always helpful if there's been advanced discussions.
Yes, our transport engineers, transport planners are speaking with First and Stagecoach about existing routes and how they might be extended. On both sites, the idea is that because there are bus routes existing that come to the edge of the sites, and so the idea is that there will be loops through to kind of make it as attractive as possible for operators to come and not change their services too much.
And I'll leave it for there for now. Thank you, convener. If anything else springs to mind, hopefully you'll indulge me to come back in.
Always contact Councillor Bolton. It's an informal thing just to get some information, so a bit more leeway than possibly normally. Next is Councillor Graham.
Okay, thanks. You'll have to bear with me. I'm working on the phone with one hand at the moment. Right, I've got 2 questions. On Greenferns, is there a proposal for a health centre included in Greenferns OP33? I mean, my understanding that was going to be going to the west of Orchardbury. You want my second one?
I'll take them both if you want.
Okay. Right. The next one, the plan boundary runs across from Provost Drive to Enamet. It runs across the 2 new holes of Arkmore Golf Course, which was allocated as a result of the 2012 local plan inquiry. So can I get assurances that it will be redrawn as required by the local plan? And it was interesting in your slides there. The 2018 plan shows the boundary, which is on the road, whilst the 2002 blue plan shows you the blue for the road, then the boundary crossing the new fairways, which were installed at great expense by Aberdeen Council.
Yeah, thank you. I'll pick up first question on the health centre, and keep me right here, Michael. The intention is very much that land will be made available for a health centre should NHS Grampian want that. And in the master plan and in the planning application, we will identify option sites for that. The current site, we're trying to, you're right, there was I think a planning application submitted. However, as far as I understand, that's stalled, isn't progressing, but we have options for sites there should it come forward. We'd very much like to see it because I think it'd be a great asset to that area. On the boundary to Auchmill, up to the Auchmill Golf Course, on the red line there is no, I can assure you, there's no intention to change the golf course and understand how it was all realigned. What we've done there is draw the red line boundary, as we quite often do, wide off any land that we intend to use. And that's predominantly to allow improvements to the junction at the Provost, let me get this right, Provost Rust, and potential improvements to the core path and access into Enermec. It's really just drawn wide so that should anything come ahead that we need to do improvements to these junctions, we've got that included. But I can assure you there's no intention to change anything with the golf course.
Just to pick up on that, just to elaborate on what Ian's saying, it's a planning legislation thing. Typically, when you're drawing a red line at proposal of application notice stage, we draw it quite generous, so that, as Ian explained, if there are requirements as part of any junction improvements, or as we discussed, the land heading north in connections, the path connections between the two sites have been included as well, and that's purely on the basis that when we go to submit then for planning, a formal planning application, that land was included within the red line and consulted on formally as part of the proposal of application notice process. What we don't want to arrive in a situation whereby land wasn't shown initially and then it needs to be shown as part of the planning application process, and that can then trigger a requirement for further consultation. So it's really just, yeah, it's to be generous, but as Ian said, there's no plans to impact on the golf course.
Okay, thanks a lot. Cheers.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Alphonse is next.
Thank you, convener. Thank you also for your presentation as well. It's very informative. What I wanted to say, first of all, was that I'm really encouraged that all ancient woodland in the dry stone dikes and everything would be retained. That's fantastic. I also wanted to know how eco these proposed houses would be. I'm thinking about obviously solar and thermal, thermal passive, airtight homes. I just wondered what kind of standard that would be at. Thank you.
Hi, I can answer this. I see Colin's here, but the brief from ACC Housing is a very high standard. It's it's above the normal that you would get anywhere else. So yeah, without going into the technical details, I can confirm it is a very high standard.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alphonse. Councillor Copeland, you're next.
Thank you, convener. You said in your presentation you're having face-to-face consultations today. Where about?
So both face-to-face consultations, the one we did on Tuesday, and the one we're doing today is at the Middlefield Hub in Manor Avenue.
Okay, there's a huge amount of houses up in Bucksburn are going to be affected. Have you any plans to do a face-to-face in Bucksburn, like at a Beacon or something, for the people in Bucksburn? Yeah,
there was quite a bit of discussion on choosing locations for the face-to-face. We've obviously undertaken a virtual consultation back in June and July, and because the sites obviously share a very similar name, and quite a number of respondents to the virtual event have an interest in both sites, we felt that maybe doing it in one location was better to avoid confusion and to allow people to obviously come and view both events. So that was the reasoning behind doing it at the one chosen location. I appreciate there has been a number of councillors have been in touch with me. Planning Service has been in touch with me regarding a potential for an additional consultation event specific to Bucksburn. So yeah, we will be in discussions with our client on that. And what we're intending doing is progressing the event today. The one for Green Ferns was relatively well attended on Tuesday, so we'll see what the attendance is like today, and then yeah, further consideration would be given if we feel that we need to do an additional one in Bucksburn.
I'd just like to point out to you that there's a lot of elderly people up there, and getting from Bucksburn to the hub in Manor involves several bus journeys.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
A car, and it's not easy to get to. And as this development is right adjacent to them, I would strongly urge you to have one in Bucksburn. You might not think it's necessary, but I think you maybe should do it. Second thing is, when I look at the site for the landward, I saw the schools, I saw the suds ponds, I saw the play parks. I didn't see a location for the Gypsy Traveller site. Where on the big scheme of things you intended to place that?
Yeah, so apologies. It's on the consultation boards. It didn't make it onto the slide today, but there's two options or two locations that we've considered. One is to the west of the site, on the kind of towards the boundary, and one is on the north of the site, more centrally. And we are looking to speak to people today about that, the consultation, about their thoughts about where it might be located. We don't have a fixed position yet, because we're trying to work up the phasing and want to make sure that the phasing fits in with where it might be located and also the services. So it's the location has to fit in with all the other facilities that we've got on site.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're saying to the west, you mean towards the AWPR?
Correct, yeah.
Right, and to the north, what's that towards?
Just off Keppel Hills Road.
Okay, right. That's fine, that's me, thank you.
Just on that point, would it be possible for you to take up the map of that site, and just so that we could get a better understanding? Because being a woman, I'm not great with that kind of description.
Yeah,
Thanks.
so yeah, apologies, I don't have the boards that are going to be shown today. We're showing the location generally here. If I can, if I just mark up, sorry. Where's my drawing thing? Yeah, so the potentially drawing an option here and an option in this location.
Okay.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Can I come back in? You had a different slide which was more green than this. Further back.
This one?
No, it's got a green background.
Green background. For landward?
Yeah.
That one.
It had schools, had the schools on it and everything.
This one here?
No.
No.
No, it's got the schools, the suds ponds, the play areas and everything clearly marked on it.
That this one?
No.
That's
well,
the
that's
main...
better, but it's not quite. It was a green map that you had up. And it had the suds ponds clearly marked on it, whereas this one hasn't.
Well, yeah, we don't have the suds locations for green ferns. It wasn't the green ferns one, was it?
No, the landward.
Yeah, we're still waiting. The engineers are still looking at where the suds ponds and basins would go for landward. So we don't have that information yet.
Okay, all right, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Copeland.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, convener. Councillor Alphonse and Councillor Bolton have probably asked some of the questions I was going to ask, and are smarter off the mark than I am. Just a follow up to, actually, still got a number of questions. Councillor Alphonse asked a question around the environmental standards that we're looking at, and I think this is probably something that we're all interested in regardless of political affiliation. Will the houses be built to passive house standards?
I have to say this is where Colin's popped up. It gets into the technical discussions about how best to deliver to platinum and gold standards, and there are different ways of doing it. I don't think, I mean, the intention is that they are very high standards, and you can do it to passive house, or you can do it in other ways. And there are a number of studies being undertaken to decide the best way to do it. Colin, I don't know if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, if I could. The passive house standard is very demanding in as much as airtightness and insulation, and we align with that. However, they do look for smaller windows than we would anticipate for dementia-friendly properties. So we'll be taking bits of the passive house, bits of platinum standard, and basically making our own Aberdeen standard, which suits our tenants' needs and requirements. They will be very efficient, though, extremely efficient.
Thanks for that. And other question is following up from a question that Councillor Copeland asked in regards to the Gypsy Traveller sites. Have we looked at where their traditional pitches are? In that, I understand that Gypsy Travellers who are nomadic, if that's the right word, don't just pitch up anywhere. They tend to pitch up somewhere that they have typically pitched up since the 16th century or whatever. So it's not random, it's like traditional. So have we looked at where they might be going?
I mean, to be honest, we're following the policy. So we've had meetings with the appropriate officers, and there isn't yet a decision about what kind of stop it is, whether it's a temporary halt or a permanent one. At the moment, we're working to the policy, which is there will be a stop in this location. I can't really add any more than that, I'm afraid.
So have we had any discussions with representatives of the Gypsy traveller community?
As a design team, no, although the ACC officers that we've spoken to have confirmed that it's still much needed. It's a much needed location.
Yeah, we're taking a lead from our housing strategy officers.
Okay, I think that's me done probably for now.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor McGregor.
Thanks very much, convener. If I can get these buttons to work. Thanks for the presentation. That's quite interesting. I was pleased the way you emphasised how well the paths are used and how many people are out there in the open, because I think something we have to bear in mind is while this OP22 Green Ferns landward is a well-established principle, that the world has changed enormously. It's not just climate chaos and the pandemic, it's as a result of that, in part, how folk are shopping and how folk are working. So the world has definitely changed. And I think we need to reflect that in our plans. So it's important when you're having paths that people are using to escape from the pressures of modern life, that they're out of sight and sound of so many other people getting on with their lives in their homes. So I think that's something that, and I'm pleased you're retaining the ancient woodland and hedging, because that's part of it. People like to see that. I have to say that the meeting we had in the summer at Bucksburn and New Hills Community Council was probably the busiest ever. And we know it's a well-established plan, but this idea came as news to them. So they're quite concerned about that. So it will be important that we build these things into whatever we're doing and the pace at which we do it. The schooling, for instance, people at Rowett South went there on the understanding that there was to be a school built there, a primary school built there, and I'm sure there will be, but the trouble is these things, the facilities, tend not to be in phase one. Now that's obviously easier to arrange when it's a project for the local authority, but these are things to bear in mind, I think. So I'm glad we've been able to have this, but I think it's absolutely vital that you have an in-area consultation, because there are many people with mobility issues who won't be able to get to Manor Avenue, yet would quite like to be able to continue to walk out into the green space near their homes. So I think they'll want to tell you that at a local consultation, and I'd be delighted if you could arrange such a thing. Thank you. And thanks, convener.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Excuse me, Councillor Bolton, you have further questions.
Thank you very much again, convener. It's just a couple of points. In terms of, obviously, with more people working at home, the digital infrastructure, maybe just a little bit on that. Now, and again, I noticed that there was a suggestion on the one out at New Hills that there was going to be retail. But again, have you had any conversations? What's the plans for that? Because I know how difficult it can be to sometimes get, shops in there. So It would be helpful to know to have that information, please.
Yeah, we as in Ryden, my colleagues in agency are actually undertaking a market report which looks at the neighbourhood centres for both sites, testing the market, what type of operators would likely locate to these locations. That's both for retail, services, employment land at Greenferns, as well as testing the temperature of the housing market as well, in terms of we're canvassing local house builders to see whether they would have interest in taking the later phases of the sites. So yes, that exercise is ongoing, and that will feed into the master plan process in terms of the range of non-residential uses that would be provided within the neighbourhood centres. So yes, we are considering that at present.
I mean, I know that you've referenced Countess Wells quite a few times, and the health centre didn't materialise there either. And what they've done is just look to put something into one of the shops as a kind of I think maybe a practitioner of some sort. So it's just, I think if we understand all of this as we're going forward, it's just quite helpful. And I was surprised, Councillor Cook, you didn't ask about EV charging points. It's always his baby, so I usually leave it for him. So it's just, again, if you can kind of give me a little bit of background just on if you're going to be putting that infrastructure in, but also about the digital connectivity, because we know how important that is, and often the more rural areas, and I know that this is a new area, suffer the worst in terms of being connected. So again, just to understand what the plans are for it, please.
You want me to answer that one, guys?
Yeah, Colin, if you don't mind, thanks.
Morning, Councillor Bolton. Yeah, all our new developments will be connected digitally. We are putting both OpenReach and City Fibre into all our developments, and that will be continuous with this as well. It's paramount of importance to us that they are connected digitally. As far as EV charging is concerned, we will put in 100% infrastructure for it, and a percentage of pillars will go in as necessary. Well, we don't want to put all 100% in at the moment because technology is always changing, and we don't want to put something in that will be redundant in 5 years' time. But infrastructure will be in the site for it.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Doig, you obviously are aware of our gold standard. And there was a question around that before. Are we looking at the same sort of standard in terms of for the affordable housing?
Well, Council said we'd be building to gold standard, which we will. There's also the platinum standard, which is slightly higher, and we're now trying to align with our net zero policy. Okay. So the standards are even higher.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Copeland.
Thank you, Convener. Sorry for the delay. I was going to ask that question. It's just been done. But the second one is, given that everything goes to plan, timescale wise, what timescale are you looking at for basically starting and finishing?
Well, do you want to pick up on this one? Or I mean, I can provide a bit of an overview. I mean, we obviously need to go in for planning in the first instance, and that's planning permission in principle. That's for the entire allocation. So as Chris and Ian explained, Greenferns is running slightly ahead of Greenferns Landward. So we're hoping to get an application in for Greenferns in the next couple of months. Landward will follow maybe about a month later. So for a major application, statutory timescales are 4 months. So we would, all being well, we'd hopefully have approvals in place by about springtime next year. And then it's a case of submission of matter specified conditions application. That's the detail, i.e. the house types, parking, landscaping, etc. for phase 1. So those applications would go in probably early summer next year. And again, running for approximately 4 months. So if all went well, Colin, we'd probably be looking to get on site the following year.
Yeah, that's correct. And obviously it depends. I mean, our council housing will be going ahead, but it also depends on the market for the private sector. What's going to happen with that?
So we're looking at possibly 2 years before a spade goes into the ground. Roughly, would that be about right?
Yeah, that could be around the timescales, yes.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Copeland. Are there any more questions? I'm not seeing any more hands at the moment. We all content with that? I'm quite lucky going last in that most of the questions I was going to raise have already been asked. So I'm not seeing any more questions. So I think it just comes to me to thank the applicants and the contributors today, Mr. Clark, and I'd also like to thank the councillors for their questions, which I think have been very, very useful. So if there's nothing more, no, everybody looks relatively content. There's no hands going up. It's time to thank you very much, gentlemen, and it's time now to move on to the third application, which is item 5, Cordice School. So if I could ask, we'll do it in the same way. We'll have the officer to talk first, and then the applicant, and then I'll open it up to any questions so that we remain consistent. So over to Dinky Brazier. Sorry if I pronounced the name wrong. I'm awful with reading names.
Right, thank you, convener. If you can just let me know when you can see the screen.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Like Mr. Clark, I will just give a quick overview of the site, just as an introduction. So the following proposal is for a pre-application notice for a major residential development with associated infrastructure, open space and landscaping at the former Cordice School, Riverview Drive on Dice. The proposed development site would extend to some 8 hectares and is located to the northeast of Dice. It is bounded by the River Don to the north and the east, and it's separated from Riverview Drive to the south and the A947 to the west by some areas of green space. To the west, between the proposed development site and the A947 is a small cluster of other buildings, and they include some residential properties. So this aerial photo shows the location of the former school buildings here and here, and there was a school playing field here. These have now been demolished and removed off-site, and it further shows the existing access road from Riverview Drive into the site and the main clusters of trees along the west, south, and there's some clusters of trees centrally in the site as well. So the following slide shows the existing allocations under the 2017 Aberdeen Local Development Plan. Even though the site was previously used as a school, it is located in the Greenbelt with the established residential area of Dice starting just to the south from Riverview Drive. The River Don and its banks are designated as a local nature conservation site, and there is a core path that runs along Riverview Drive and north along the A947 towards the Fort Martin and Bochum Way. In addition, the majority of the site, so basically most of it apart from the area that was taken up by the buildings, is also considered part of the green space network. As part of the proposed local development plan, some of these allocations might change. The site has been put forward as OP14, and the accompanying text in the 2020 proposed local development plan considers the site suitable for various uses, including a development of 50 to 100 residential units, a garden centre or a health and fitness centre. 6 representations were received in relation to this proposed allocation, and the site is therefore part of the examination of the proposed local plan. So even though the proposed allocation is a material consideration, at the moment its weight is fairly limited. The situation might change following the receipt of the report for examination and the subsequent adoption of the next local development plan. The timing of any formal application is therefore very important. So for now, a proposal of application notice was submitted in June. Following this, the applicant held their public event last week, and details of this will need to be in the pre-application consultation report, part of the proposed application. Given the proposal of application notice was submitted at the end of June, the earliest an application can be submitted will be at the end of September or the beginning of October, so there's at least a minimum of 12 weeks after the validation of the proposal of application notice. And with this, I would like to hand over to Mr. Lorimer or Mr. Harrington.
Thank you, Danica, for your presentation. I'll just, similar to the last presentations for Green Ferns and Lambert, I'll just provide a brief overview of kind of background, planning background and context of the site, and then I'll pass over to Daniel Harrington from THE Architects and Planners just to talk you through the emerging proposals for the site. So apologies if there's some repetition here from Danica's presentation. The proposed site encompasses land associated with the former Cardice School, comprising about 8 hectares, accessed off Riverview Drive to the northeast of Dice. As noted by Danica, the school closed in 2018 as it was deemed surplus to requirements following the opening of Orchard Brae. Subsequently, the school buildings they suffered significant fire damage and were later demolished and removed from the site. Whilst the site is presently designated as Greenbelt and Green Space Network, it was promoted through the emerging local development plan review process and is identified as an opportunity site OP14 as being suitable for a range of uses. That includes up to 100 homes, a garden centre, or indeed a health and fitness village. So following a period of marketing by Aberdeen City Council, who own the site site's now under offer to our client David Wilson Homes, subject to achieving planning permission for a proposed development of around 90 to 92 homes. The proposal development plan forms a settled view of Aberdeen City Council, having been approved in 2020 for consultation. The plan is currently under examination by Scottish ministers, and their report of examination is expected imminently. In terms of context, the site it's set well back from Riverview Drive. It's relatively obscured from. Sorry, Daniel, are you able to share?
Yeah, I'll just. Is that showing up for everyone?
Yes, it is. Yes, you may just flick through to. Yeah. So, in terms of context, then the site it's set well back from Riverview Drive. It's relatively obscured from public views by existing landscaping, and the proposed development by David Wilson will focus on redeveloping the brownfield area, so the central area of the site, which is associated with the footprint of the former school buildings. It benefits from a number of mature trees, which are predominantly located along the western edge, so between the site and the residential buildings to the west. These trees form an important context to the site and will be retained where possible as part of the overall development. It also benefits from a large area of undeveloped open space to the northeast, which leads down towards the River Don. That area will also be retained and incorporated into the overarching open space provision for the development. There's also an existing public path which skirts along the northern edge of the site next to the river, and that too will be retained both for the benefit of existing users who walk along that path, as well as the proposed residents. There's also the community orchard, which is situated just to the southwest, out with the site boundary. So recognised as a well-used community asset, and again that will be retained. I'll just pick up, Danica had obviously mentioned that there was a public consultation event undertaken last week. That was last Wednesday at the Dice Community Centre. And it's good to be back doing face-to-face consultations again. It was really well attended. We had over 60 people through the door over the course of that afternoon. And as Danica had mentioned, that the feedback to that will be considered by David Wilson Homes, and there'll be a pre-application consultation report reflecting that feedback prepared as part of any future planning application. So I'll now pass over to Daniel Harrington, who will provide a bit further detail on how the proposals are starting to take shape and responding to the specific characteristics of the site.
Thanks very much, Michael. I'll just flick through some images of the site, which just highlights some of the points that Michael's made and have been important in informing the design and our assessment of the context of the site. So the buildings, as said, have been demolished, but you can still see the footprints and the hard standing associated with the former school buildings, and the roads still remain, the access roads to the schools still remain. So this is a view looking across the site towards the east, and this is also heading eastwards, looking at the former footprints of the buildings, and you can see some of the woodland located to the east that would remain as part of the proposals. There's as explained, there's an extensive network of footpaths all around the site, to the south, to the north, to the east. So it's well provided for in terms of existing connectivity for informal recreation, and I would have thought these are fairly important paths to the local community. This image just provides an overview of the context of the site. You can see the locations of the former buildings within the centre, which are still shown on the aerial image, but now demolished. There's an existing road to the west of the site, as seen here, that ends in a hammerhead, which provides a strong boundary between the existing developed area and the woodland edge. This woodland then screens the site from the rural area to the northwest, and no developments planned within that woodland area, and the road then forms the boundary to any development. The site to the former school buildings and the existing roads is relatively flat, but then the land towards the River Don does slope slightly more steeply down to a plateau at the river's edge, which is obviously at risk of flooding, but can provide a valuable resource to any development here. And then you've got the B-listed scheme burial enclosure located to the southeast corner, but that's obscured by existing trees. So this is the draft site layout that we presented to the community last week, which is for approximately 92 homes, responding to the characteristics of the site, and the proposed developments focused on those flatter parts of the site where the former school buildings were located. This ensures that we can retain the trees and woodland that surround the site to the east. So if you see the rear fences along this western edge, this roughly follows the line of the existing road, so no development is then encroaching into that existing woodland. The street design is proposed to reflect the green surroundings of the site and incorporate tree-lined verges that connect through the site. So those connect along all the streets and then open out into the open space towards the river. And with careful landscape planting, these can provide valuable commuting and foraging habitats as a part of the development. The houses incorporate a range of properties, including 3 and 4 bedroom homes, and a range of affordable housing opportunities as well, in line with policy. There's a focus on minimising the appearance of car parking within the design, and we've located garages to the sides and rear of houses, and parking courts hidden behind housing just to obscure that from public view. Towards the eastern edge, the houses have all been designed to front the river and provide an outlook to a new riverside park. And the design of this park is thought to be more of a low intervention design with no lighting, so this remains a route for commuting nocturnal species and has a high biodiversity value. The focus of the design of this space will be on landscape and planting, so in order to best support these local species at the site. And this has all been informed by environmental surveys and tree surveys that have been undertaken by EnviroCentre. The area has a wide network of footpaths that circle the site and access the River Don network, and it's proposed to enhance these routes and provide more permeability and access in and around the development site. As you'll see, there's a proposal for surface water drainage, a suds basin to the west of the site. This is located within a clearing of the trees, so we've used the tree survey information to shape and locate that basin to minimize any impact on trees or tree roots. And this also provides a route through for an emergency access onto the A947. But that would be for use of emergency service vehicles only, and we're showing it finished as a grasscrete surface, so it would be would have minimal visual impact after being constructed. And then we're still finalizing the house types and design, but these are some images of some recent David Wilson Homes developments in Aberdeen, showing the style of house that we'd be looking to utilize on the site. The material finishes also still need to be finalized with the planning submission, but these would be chosen to reflect surrounding context, probably looking at neutral render tones and materials used as features to provide a bit of variety and interest. And you can see some of the different features and materials that have been used on David Wilson Homes on previous developments. So these are just some examples of the house types that we'd be looking at. I think that's everything from me. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. First, only one hand up so far from Councillor Alphonse.
Thank you, convener. Can I just ask, considering how close the development is to the River Don, I wondered if there's going to be any flood defences, if any, if you're going to do anything, just in case there's a flood. Thank you.
So the engineers have looked at the extent of flood risk on the site. So we're there'll be a formal flood risk assessment submitted as a part of the planning application, but we're fairly confident from the flooding information that SEPA holds that the risk of flooding remains at the lower levels where we're proposing the Riverside Park, and all the houses and their floor levels will be significantly above that flood level.
Okay, thank you. Just because I'm aware, because beside the up the Don a bit, I've seen pretty bad flooding over the years, so I was just concerned about that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alphonse. Councillor Copeland.
Thank you, convener. Could you put on your slide that showed the current path, please? You're speaking about the paths, and you've got a slide that shows the paths. Yeah, I like that one, but there's one further back when you go to as is now and the path going through it. Yeah, that one that you've just shown, and then your map of the development would actually take away that path. So you're rerouting the path, because the current path comes from the car park further down the road in Riverview Drive, comes right along, it comes up the hill, and it goes right across that bit, which is the bit you've shown. But your development is built right on top of that path. Are you moving the path further down so that it comes along the front of your houses? Or are you just taking that path away altogether?
Is it this path this is the core path that follows the front of the site? There's an area of space between Riverview Drive and the ditch. Is it the path that's in this area?
The path comes from, if you've been on site, the path comes from there's a car park about 300-400 yards further down.
Yeah.
And you come walking along there, it splits and it goes up the hill to the left, and it basically, you see where your current buildings are on this map. Now, actually, it comes along the front of them. And it basically, the path that comes in from Riverview Drive, the one you've got a red line on, it would basically join that about halfway down.
I think, I mean,
that's the path that you've got on your picture. If you go back to that picture with the path on it, you see where you are there? Well, that path basically, if you can see my cursor, we probably can't. Where you've got your red line boundary, that path basically comes up just inside.
On this side?
Right along your red line boundary, actually.
So what, because you've got the ditch that runs along the front here that follows through, there's a ditch that almost follows the length of the red line boundary, but the road sits on a raised platform.
Well, that path, to my memory, goes right where you've got that line of trees.
In here?
Yeah.
I need to double check.
If you go back to the picture of the path, you'll see it. You'll see the trees on the right hand side of it. Now, the other picture, the actual as it is now, at ground level.
So a path in here between the buildings and the trees.
No, go back to the
I think it was a photograph that you showed, Daniel. One of the
This one.
photographs. Yeah,
that one. That's a line of trees that's on your map. You can see the path goes up there. That path joins the road virtually beside where the school buildings were. So are you going to be building on top of that, or are you going to be building the other side of those trees?
No, that path is the core path. So that path is down here. So it runs in this open space that's not part of the allocation. So that would be retained.
Okay, that's right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Copeland, for your local knowledge. Any further? Oh, Councillor McGregor.
Thanks, Convener. I was pleased to be able to attend the exhibition at the community centre, and I feel that the responses that people were giving who attended was quite positive. However, there's been a landslide of, do you have landslides of emails? I don't know. A whole heap of emails anyway, with people mostly concerned about the same thing, which is traffic, schooling and health.
Okay.
Councillor McGregor, you've muted yourself.
Neil, you're on mute.
You're still muted. You're off. You're
Well,
okay now.
This is what happens. You touch a button and you think you've unmuted and then it remutes while you're not looking. You think you've done it and you look away. Right, a lesson there. The first thing is, are there any flats on this site?
No, understanding is there's no flats. It's all housing.
Right, good. That's what I thought. And I think you said there was something like 53% of the site is going to be allocated for housing, and the rest is to be green space. Is that approximately right?
One for you, Daniel, in terms of percentages, but yeah, there will be a significant provision of open space on site. I'm not sure what the exact percentages are of the split between housing and open space, Daniel. I'm not sure whether you know that figure, but we will be meeting the local development plan requirements and probably exceeding it in terms of open space provision.
That's what it looked like. Now, this is an absolutely gorgeous area in a bend of the river, above the river, so there'll be no flooding risk there. And it really is a most attractive area that's, as you say, well used by walkers, and it's nice. It's nice to be able to see that continuing into the future. So that leaves questions about traffic and schooling. I mean, if you have about 100 houses there, how many children do you think that's going to accommodate, and how many spaces do you think there might be at the primary and academy schools?
I couldn't say for any certainty how many children will be accommodated within the development, but the two schools, Dice Primary and Dice Academy, are currently operating under capacity. If you look at the most recent school roll forecasts, now similar to what I kind of fed back in respect to the previous two sites, when the application goes in, it will be subject to consultation with ACC, education and the developer obligations team. So if there are any capacity issues identified, then they'll be dealt with through developer obligations.
Of course. Thanks.
In terms of the traffic generated by the development, there'll be a transport statement that will be undertaken and submitted as part of the application, and that'll look at the existing access into the sites, whether that's safe in terms of visibility, and also whether it has capacity to accommodate that level of development, and whether there's any mitigation measures required on the surrounding transport network.
Right, thanks. Yes, it comes out directly onto Riverview Drive, and it's one entrance and exit to the site with an emergency thing. Good.
The emergency access will lead out to the west and join an existing track. I don't know if Daniel, if you want to show that site layout plan that shows that emergency access going out to the west. So it's just kind of runs to the south of the Suds and out west to join that track.
Right, good. And the hope would be that these houses, which are obviously going to be expensive quality homes, the hope would be that they were in a bit of space, a bit of garden ground, and that there are space for trees within the gardens to keep neighbourly relations at their best. So there's a bit of space between the houses. That would be nice. I mean, these designs you've shown are of course the standard houses that could be anywhere. And I always think it's nice if we can get a sense of place from the buildings, but clearly that's more difficult to do. But I think that's my question. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Sorry about the delay there. I was trying to get my buttons to work. Any further questions? I'm not seeing any further questions. No. Last chance. No. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was very, very useful, and I think we've learned a lot today. And again, thank you. So I believe that brings the meeting to a close. I'd just like to thank everyone that took part today, and especially the questions from the councillors that asked questions. They left me with very little input. So I'd just like to thank everyone this morning for the meeting. I do apologise that it was rearranged. And I'm looking forward to seeing everyone at the planning committee in about an hour and 20.